Hello everyone, I hope you're doing well. Today I'm going to talk about the PRO3 and we're going to make some bass patches from scratch. And I'm going to kind of make them raw just using the oscillators. I think that's really important. So I'll explain as I go. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make an init patch. So I'll hold down and tap latch. That's the shortcut to do that. Sounds like this. Okay, just a saw. So I'm going to tune, first step is I'm going to tune all these down. Put all the oscillators down to lowest octave and set their volume level to be 12 o'clock or straight up, just so they're all towards the middle. Sounds like this, or like this. Okay. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change some of the pitch, and I'm going to detune the first one +7. I like to use the clicky encoders here sometimes to set exact values. So I use this one to get close, and then I use this to get exactly what I want if I have a number in my head. So this one's +7, this one's -7, and I'm leaving the third oscillator to be on pitch, so it sounds like this. Just has a little bit more depth if you have a little bit of detune in there. Okay, the next step that we're going to do is we're going to turn on the filter amount. The envelope filter amount. So that makes it so if we have the filter, then you're getting. The next thing on the filter envelope is I'm going to add a little bit of attack. So I'm going to add a 10 attack so it gets this. I'll play both these so you can kind of hear it. So if I leave it at 0, has like a nice precision attack, which sometimes is cool. Oh, if you give it like about 10, just a little bit, then what you get is you get this kind of warming kind of sound. I'll play that a little bit later so you can hear that even more. Okay, the other thing is when I hold a note, that's a way that you can have retriggering. Right now is off, so that it plays like this. So if you want the attack to be on every note, under miscellaneous parameters, you turn retrigger on, and then now you'll hear what it sounds like. That's the sound I'm going to use for this bass. So I'm going to turn retrigger on under miscellaneous parameters. Okay. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add some release. So I'm going to leave it at about 90, which is pretty long, just so you get that nice, sound, which is cool. Now I think that's everything. Let me double check and make sure I've got everything, because I just want to have oscillators all the way down, the pitch detuned a little bit on oscillator 1 and 2. I want the amp envelope to have a nice long release on it. I want retriggering to be on, and then on the filter envelope I have an amount of about 40, so it's adding 40 every time the envelope's triggered. And then on the attack, I just put a little bit on there so you can hear. And let me record, let me do this through here. Let's just do this so I can do. So I'll do this. So let me turn the filter down. Something like that. So now let me show you the attack difference here. So I'm going to put this to 0. So it's a very different tone. But just by adding a little bit of attack, you can get that kind of a nice little splat at the beginning, which is cool. So I'm going to leave it on there like that. Okay, so this. Okay, let me slow that down actually so it's a little more. Yeah, just like that's fine. All right, so now what you're hearing is basically a saw bass, right? Because that's just the saw waveform. What's cool about the PRO3, and one of the things that as I've been using it that I think stands out the most, is the sound of the raw oscillators and the way that they hook them up to make them very immediate. To just play with them. And so the whole point of this video is to get something like this, like a setup that you like for a bass, tone, and then just play with the oscillator shapes and the shape mod. And all of these are things you can just tweak. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to play this and let this run for a second. And all we're going to do is play with different shapes. So let's go ahead and go with the triangle bass first. So let's do a triangle wave. You hear the tone there, very different. And let's go to, I'm going to set the third one also to triangle. So there we go. So now within the triangle wave, even though that's it's a little bit harder to hear. Let me give it the, even with the attack, it's a very soft bass. And that's kind of the point of a triangle. But now let me play with the shape mods and show you what different tones you can get. We can brighten it up a little bit. So now let's switch over to a, I'll play this in reverse just so it sounds a little different. We're going to go to a square wave. And for the digital, we'll set it to pulse. And again, by changing these, you get all sorts of different tones. Kind of more of a classic I'm just changing the filter so it starts a little bit earlier, but that's a cool, like that right there, I mean, just to me as a nice square bass, it's very usable. Let me put it on random. I'm changing the playback every once in a while just so it doesn't drive you too nuts. All right, so now let's go to saw, because saw is kind of a classic. And again, lots of different subtle tonalities you can get just by tweaking these. And then you can go in between too. Like you can go in between a saw and a square. Okay, so that's basically what I really wanted to talk about. I'm going to extend this a little bit more and show you a couple of things I thought were kind of cool and interesting. One is that you can use the, I've set all these all the way down to the lowest octave. And the reason I do that is because the digital oscillator can also add more harmonics and more character. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that square bass that we were playing with earlier, just so it's kind of a classic sound. But what I'm going to do is on the digital oscillator, I'm going to pick a wavetable that has lots of different tone. So let me turn both of these off. So I've turned I've turned oscillator 1 and oscillator 2 off for a second. So if you get something like, I don't know, something like that. Very different tone, but now what you can do is you can add those into just a little bit to get all these different. Let me add some, the other thing I'm going to do on the filter is I'm going to add some drive, so just to get a little beefier. So just by tweaking the wave shape here, and then you could change the how much. So sometimes you might have something where you just want a little bit of it. So let me go to a different wave shape here. So the whole reason was to show you that On the third oscillator here, if by turning them all down, even though this one's at the lowest octave, you can still get lots of high harmonics. And then when you have the filter, taking bites out of that, then you can get some really cool different tonalities for basses. All right, so the other thing I wanted to show you with this guy is that kind of a trick I ran into was that you can turn oscillator 3 into an LFO by clicking this. But by clicking that, you're not going to, now let me turn these off so you only hear the third oscillator, but you're not going to hear much because it's so low you can't hear it. But if you turn this all the way up to the highest octave with low frequency, there's this place that you just got to, which is on some of the wavetables that you can get some really cool low rumble, which is very valuable for bass, and I'll show you why. So let me pick one that I know works pretty well, which I think was called, let me find it, Fat Saw. Now, so this one you have to kind of tune, so let me, even with that, you're getting some nice, so let's tune this here. There we go. So it just adds a nice little grumble in there. So if I play, play with how much you want with that. What's cool though is if you listen to how much this adds, like I'll put it so it's a sharp attack. I'm gonna take it out. So this sounds like a more standard bass with this rumble on there. So that's a lot of depth. Okay, now we have 3 filters. Let me stop that for a second. So we're just going through the basics here, playing with oscillator shape and playing with shape mod, which is 2 encoders that you can just kind of mess around with. And then the filters, let's talk about those real quick. So you have basically a 4-pole OTA and a 4-pole ladder and a 2-pole OTA, and this one's state variable. So 3 filters that you can play with. So let's listen to how those sound when we go through this. So the default filter I love. It has a lot of low end, which I think goes well with this. The ladder is a little bit thinner, but also a little bit smoother towards the mid-range. So I'll play those again. So you hear that. Now let's go to the state variable, which is going to be much more aggressive. I'll back down. There we go. And this one, of course, is adjustable to go into a high pass as well. So just with this sort of layout, I find that let me add some other things on top of this, but to me, just starting with the bass raw oscillator sound going through a filter, you just have a lot to work with to make bass tones. And then of course playing around with the envelope too, the filter envelope. All right, so now let's add some feedback. Just trying to get some gnarly stuff here. All right, now I'll add some analog distortion. All right, so let me put all three down at the bottom, and then let me pick some. That's too much flavor. I'm just looking for one that has a little bit of. There we go. We'll end on something like that. So now I'm getting all picky. But that's why I love this synthesizer. Those are just too much high pitch. Let me go to the bass one so we grab a pulse wave. There we go. Just want to get something that rolls a little bit. Right in there. Okay. Anyway, you get the idea. So I hope this was interesting for anybody who's got a Pro3. And if you don't have a Pro3, start with the oscillators and really listen to the oscillators before you put all the cool effects and modulations and everything else that you can do, because it's cool to have that toolbox. And this thing can really modulate stuff. I mean, I didn't even go into that. But I wanted to come back to the heart of it, which is the sound of the analog VCOs and how much depth and interest you can get just out of, starting with those. So anyway, thank you very much. I hope that was cool, and take it easy. Bye.